aging. Everybody does it, nobody loves it. But if you're not sleeping well, you're speeding your clock forward, not back. 80 million Americans struggle every night. Twice that number suffer at least once per week. Turn Back Your Clock is speaking with top sleep experts and therapists to help you get better sleep and more of it. Welcome to the Pursuit of Sleepiness interview series.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Turn Back Your Clock's Pursuit of Sleepiness series. This is James Kuhn, and this series, if you're watching it, it's probably because you're having trouble sleeping. And as you may or may not know, if this is your first time here, we are speaking with talented experts on sleep and helping people get better sleep. Everything from cognitive behavioral therapists for insomnia to MDs to certified hypnotherapists from the East and West of the United States. And today we are joined by certified Los Angeles hypnotherapist Marc Cooper, who is also a very long time friend of mine, probably going on 2 decades, and we still get along. So that's a rare thing in this day and age. So happy to, always good to see you, Marc, and happy to have you here with us today on the Pursuit of Sleepiness.
Great to see you too. Thank you for inviting me.
And this is I think our 4th try at overcoming various technical difficulties. This isn't this film, folks.
But who's counting?
I've got a little just little stick figure check marks here. If it was Hangman, I would have lost already. So
all right.
Let's just jump right in. Talk about the profession of hypnotherapy and how one becomes a certified hypnotherapist.
Okay. Well, there is no licensing. You're correct in saying it's certified, certainly in the USA. And basically, to become a hypnotherapist, you find a course or an instructor on hypnotherapy, whether or not that's in person or online. You go through the course, you get evaluated, and then you are free to help people change. It's
Excellent.
Not a particularly complicated process.
Okay. What kind of inspired you to pursue it as a means of helping people?
Well, really, it was my own personal journey, my own life experience, the ups and downs of life, and realizing that the biggest challenges that we typically face are inside our own heads. Mm-hmm. And if we can win that battle, we can overcome those challenges of what's inside our head, then everything else kind of falls into place. So that was really the motivation. So it was admittedly kind of selfish in the beginning. It was to help myself. And then it became helping other people would help myself. So that was really my motivation.
Well, I forget who the quote is from, but "Physician, heal thyself." Is that not a medical?
I'll take your word. I'll take your word.
That into hypnotherapist, hypnotize thyself.
Yeah.
So
I'll take your word. What
I've read, which I found fascinating, is there's such a wide variety of things that hypnotherapy can help people with. I was actually amazed. I always just thought it was kind of like most people look at it as like a parlor trick or something you see on, stage in Vegas where they convince people to do crazy things and people do them.
Right.
And nobody really believes in it. But I guess before we talk about some of the different things that you've helped people with or that people can be helped with, why don't we dispel some of the common myths about hypnotherapy first?
Okay. Well, I guess the biggest myth is that you will end up doing something that you don't want to do. And hypnosis is a partnership between the hypnotherapist, the hypnotist, and the subject. Mm-hmm. It's not mind control. You're not going to do something you don't want to do. You're not going to give away your deepest, darkest secrets. I couldn't hypnotize you to give me your ATM PIN number. That's just not going to happen.
Well,
you're not going to do
anything. Uncle to change the will.
No, you're not. You're not going to go
to.
against. No, you're not going to go against anything that goes against any kind of moral or religious beliefs. It's very much a consent state. So I guess that is probably the biggest myth, which we should dispel, is that it's not mind control. You are always in control.
But yet there is some validity to people doing some unusual things in these demonstrations. So why is that? There's a reason why that is.
There is a reason why that is. And that's when you go to a hypnosis stage show, you're going with the mindset, with the idea in your mind that if you're going to volunteer, you're going to go on stage, you may be asked to do weird and wonderful things. You may be asked to quack like a duck, or, you know, imagine that you're drunk, or that the hypnotist is your favorite celebrity. You're going in with that mindset, so you are already suggestible, but you're not doing anything that's too crazy. Like in a stage show, I couldn't hypnotize you to kill the person sitting next to you. That's just not going to happen unless you happen to be a homicidal maniac.
Really tested that person for some reason, and it was unbeknownst to you.
It's just not going to happen. But there are instances where I could hypnotize you to be an angry drunk, but I would have to put in an additional suggestion saying that it would all be verbal aggression. You would not get physically violent, because things like that can happen. But that's not too out of the ordinary for someone to get a little angry and start getting aggressive. But when you go to a stage show, you are going in with that mindset. You are already suggestible. And so that's why when people go to these shows, they do often outlandish things. It's because they're already almost primed for it.
And so that kind of leads into the next idea, which is, if somebody is determined to not be hypnotized, then they're probably going to win that battle. It is a partnership. They really do need to want to be helped with whatever it is that they're seeking hypnotherapy for.
Absolutely. There are a couple of basic requirements for someone to be hypnotized. The first and most important is that you want to be hypnotized. If you want to be, you will be. If you don't, you won't. It's as simple as that. But that is the basic requirement, is that you want to be hypnotized.
Okay. So, in your experience so far, what are some of the more common things that people come to you for hypnotherapy?
Well, I guess the most famous is quitting smoking, stopping smoking. But believe it or not, that is actually probably the least effective use of hypnosis in the therapeutic field. Commonly, you come across anxiety, PTSD. A very big one, and where hypnosis really shines, is in pain management. Chronic pain, acute pain. But you have to be very careful with that. If someone came to me with a migraine headache, hypnosis could absolutely get rid of that pain. But if you have not seen a doctor first to rule out a tumor or some kind of brain issue, then we would both be in trouble. So when dealing with pain, I do require a doctor's referral, but certainly pain management. And really, hypnosis can deal with any kind of behavioral change, whether or not that's getting rid of something, a fear or a phobia, or enhancing something like sports performance or confidence or something like that. Any kind of behavioral change is what hypnosis addresses.
You mentioned pain management, which, you mentioned anxiety, which I want to come back to, but pain management is fascinating because, especially in light of the opioid crisis, they're becoming such a front and center issue in this country. And something like, I don't know, there's hundreds of people a day that are dying from opioid related overdoses, which is just disgusting. What level of pain, and I already know the answer to this, but that's why I'm setting it up, because I think it's fascinating and people should be aware of it. Talk about some of the things that hypnotherapy can overcome pain-wise, that people would be just mind blown.
Well, I mean, really, any kind of chronic pain, any kind of pain that you've had for a significant amount of time that really is of no use to you. Like if you have an injury, you break your leg, you have pain. There is an obvious reason for that pain at that time. But if 5 years later you're still suffering from pain, then that is something that could be addressed with hypnosis. There are a lot of studies. You mentioned opioids. There are a lot of studies. I know there was a British one that was released fairly recently that showed the effectiveness of hypnosis addressing that. And then, as I said, migraines, really any type of pain, emotional and physical, can be addressed, because all pain really goes through your brain. It's nerve impulses that are processed through the brain. So you can address that. And essentially what the drugs do is they change the way that the brain processes the pain in the first place.
So I just think it's, it almost, for me, having had different amounts of a lot of pain in my life for different reasons, and having taken different kinds of things for that pain, that it just shuts down the receptors. So like doing it like a neurological shutdown of that same process is just fascinating to me. But I was kind of thinking about something that you had mentioned in previous conversations, with people getting hypnotherapy in advance of potentially very painful tattoos, or hypnobirthing. Let's talk about those two things. I think those are pretty extreme examples.
You can go a little bit further, and there are people who have major surgeries with no chemical anesthetic, with hypnoamnesia. Not amnesia, anesthetic. So yes, for a tattoo, you can essentially suggest that the limb or wherever you're having the tattoo is frozen like a block of ice, and the pain, it just does not exist in your head. Hypnobirthing is a field that I'm not involved with, but again, that's something that has become very popular. I think Meghan Markle recently just went through that process. And again, it's all, you have the same experience of giving birth without the overwhelming pain.
Well, if you've ever been in the room with a woman delivering a baby, which I now have, that any woman who's had a child would equate it with a major surgery. So I put them right there at the same level, and probably even more so. Let's talk about, is there an understanding of why it is so effective in blocking pain?
Well,
I've
lost you.
Yeah,
Okay.
Is there an understanding of why, why it's effective? I mean, purely from a suggestion standpoint. I mean, there's no chemical interference whatsoever, unless it's a chemical reaction that's being produced by the brain itself that blocks the pain.
Well, what happens with hypnosis is we are communicating directly with the unconscious, subconscious mind, however you want to refer to it. What we're doing is we're bypassing the critical faculty, which is kind of the filter which you develop as you become older. And we are providing suggestions which your mind then wraps itself around. And all hypnosis is really is an intense focus around a single thought or idea. It's one of the reasons that children are very easy to hypnotize, because they don't have that critical faculty yet built up. So the suggestions go straight through to their mind. You can suggest to them there's a pink elephant waiting outside the front door, and they're going to go rush off to check and see if it's there. If I suggest that to you, chances are you're probably not, and that's your critical faculty.
I might sneak over without drawing a lot of attention to myself, just to make sure.
Right. But essentially, that's what's happening is we're bypassing the critical part of your mind, and then the subconscious mind is focusing on, it's wrapping itself around a single idea. So going back to who would be the most suggestible of people, again, anyone can be hypnotized, but the more creative you are, the more intelligent you are, the more you can focus, the easier and deeper. But really anyone can be. And the more often you're hypnotized, the deeper and the more effective it will be. It's kind of a learned skill.
Okay. There's another use that, and I kind of asked this question before, and you shined some light on it, or shed some light on it, which I thought was also interesting, a use of hypnotherapy, which was to kind of enable people, talking about focus, enable people to study and retain things better, to be better test takers, for high stress examinations that require a lot of memorization and intense focus.
Right. Yeah, that's very much a case of taking tests is a learned skill. Learning to concentrate, learning to focus, learning to control that anxiety. So there are certain techniques that we can use to enhance your ability to focus, to stay in control, to react in certain ways in certain situations. Mm-hmm. So it's a behavioral change, and behavioral changes is where hypnosis really shines.
So I believe it was called future pacing, or is that something else?
Essentially, yes. For phobias, you are looking backwards. You're working with a trigger that happened in the past. Mm-hmm. For anxieties, for taking tests, for things that haven't happened yet, we use a different process. But yes, it's future pacing. And future pacing is really how we would test whether or not the work that we've done has been effective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's, I guess, talk about managing expectations. When it comes to coming into hypnotherapy, and you were kind of going into this a little bit, but just to kind of, encapsulate that, when somebody comes in to sit down with somebody like yourself, and they can do it online, it can be done, like telemedicine. You can do that same thing. You can help anybody anywhere in the world. So what is it? What is that encounter like when they?
Well, a typical session, if I were going to go through it, is we have an initial complimentary strategy session where we discuss, what it is that you want to achieve, why you want to achieve it. Have you tried anything in the past? What worked, what didn't work? Mm-hmm. All those kinds of things. So we get a basic idea of what you want to do. And then we make a decision as to whether or not you and I would be a good fit. Mm-hmm. It has to be a two-way thing. Again, that's the partnership. Mm-hmm. So we'll start there. We'll then go through a basic explanation of what I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to be doing it, how I'm going to be communicating with your unconscious, subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. Then we'll do what's known as an induction. We'll take you into the hypnotic state. We'll deepen you. We'll do the work. They'll bring you out. And that's that. And the session can last anywhere from 45 minutes, an hour, up to say 90 minutes. After that, I wouldn't do too much more for the first and often only session. Mm-hmm. If there's a follow-up, it can be as short as 15 minutes because we would not need the initial discussion. Simply put you into the state, do the suggestion work, bring you out again. Now, so really, for most things, you're looking at just a single session.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are reasons that you would tell somebody that you're unable to work with them, that I think you mentioned before. And what would those be?
Well, I guess the biggest one is that you're not at the point where you really want to make the change that you say you want to. And through our initial discussion, we will find out whether or not that's the case.
And who they're doing
if you don't, if you don't want to, let's say it's quitting smoking. Mm-hmm. If you come with a packet of cigarettes, or we're online and you have the packet of cigarettes, and I say to you, take those cigarettes, squash the box, throw it out the window. Apart from the littering aspect, mm-hmm. If you pause for even a second, then you're not really at what we call threshold. You're not at the point where you really want to make the change. Mm-hmm. So that would be probably the primary reason why we wouldn't work together. because it's not going to be effective for you
Mhm.
or for me. And I want you to be able to make the change that you want to make, but you have to want to make it, if that
Is it,
makes sense.
isn't it also as important, or I think, you've mentioned previously that uh, if they're doing it for somebody else versus doing it for themselves.
Yeah, again, if any change would occur, it would likely be very short term.
Mhm.
You have to want to be making the change.
Mhm.
You know, you have to understand that a change needs to happen. You have to understand that you are the one that's making the change, and you have to want to make that change now. If
Right.
we have those three components, then the change will happen. If
Mhm.
not, it'll be very short term or not at all. So really, you can't quit smoking for someone else.
Mhm.
You know, it
And
has to
now,
be.
being able to work with people from home actually has its advantages from a relaxation and focus and anxiety standpoint.
It does, yes. I made a deliberate choice to work in this way. I took the view that if you go see a doctor or a dentist, any kind of medical professional, you typically have automatic anxiety, and that doesn't work well um, with what we're doing. So I decided that I would work wherever you are most comfortable. So whether or not that's in your home, in your office, at a Starbucks, at a local park, wherever you can relax, wherever you are most comfortable is where we will do the session, whether or not it's in person or remotely.
Okay. So, um, going back to anxiety and reducing anxiety for the sessions, or the fact that anxiety seems to be one of the most common things that you find yourself uh, dealing with, that actually dovetails perfectly with helping people with sleep issues, because what I've experienced myself, and from so many people that I've spoken to that have gone through or are going through bouts of sleeplessness, it's almost always related. If it's not not pharmaceutically induced because they're taking some kind of a medication that impacts their sleep, or some other kind of substance, it's almost always related to a stress or anxiety of some kind in some way.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, typically almost all sleep issues are related to an inability to stop your mind racing, to worrying about future events, past events.
Mhm.
So with hypnosis, we address those anxieties. We can either turn them down or eliminate them completely. But sleeping is a habit, and we can work directly with that habit to change it into something more positive. Yeah.
Um, well, I guess that you probably don't have as much of a problem with people wanting to make the change. It's typically not, like with smoking. When it comes to sleeping,
Right.
people, if they're not sleeping and they're talking to you, they want to sleep, and it's really not for anybody else more than it is for themselves.
Ab-
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
you really get to focus on the anxiety component and drilling down into, what is the root of it, or roots of it,
Yeah.
and then either, finding out whether or not you can help them, get rid of that anxiety, or at least, like you said, turn down the volume on it, and so that they
Yeah.
can change their behaviors and be able to, get back to getting good sleep.
Yeah. I mean, anxiety often deals with things that are, external influences that are beyond our control. So with hypnosis, we change the way that you react to those external stimuli.
Mhm.
Anxiety, a certain amount of anxiety is healthy. It's a natural thing. But
Right.
if it's impacting your life to such a level that you can't sleep, that's obviously detrimental to your health.
So, when before the video froze, we were talking about, with sleep anxiety, you don't have the problems of people not wanting to get help or doing it for somebody else, primarily for themselves. So it really allows you to focus on that anxiety issue. and determining what it is that's causing that, and really helping them to drill down on it and overcome it, or tone down the volume so that they can get back to getting good sleep. And I think you were saying that a certain amount of anxiety is healthy, but sleep is a habit.
Yeah. Yeah, what we do is we find a more positive way for your mind to address the anxiety without it impacting your sleep.
Mm.
And what we'd like to do is to change the sleep habit to allow you to sleep a perfect or a healthy amount for you.
Mm-hmm.
And we address the anxiety by changing the way that you process it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as you said, a healthy amount of anxiety is perfectly natural. But if it is impacting your sleep, then we need to find a way for your mind to deal with it in a more positive way that still allows you to sleep in a healthy amount for you.
Okay, so I have notes that I typically would touch on, but we kind of talked about what a typical first session is like. We do know that you do have telemed capabilities, so people can literally reach you from anywhere, and you can work with their schedule and your schedule to find a time that's mutually convenient. Typical number of sessions, as you said, an effective session can typically result in good outcomes from just one session. So you don't really go into it anticipating that it's going to be some ongoing thing. So people who are watching and thinking about working with Marc, you can, look at it as Marc's anticipation is that you're only going to have to talk to him one time and you're probably going to get some good results. Now, that's not a guarantee that that's what's going to happen, but don't think he's going in lining you up for, 10 months of rigorous hypnotherapy. Let me ask you something that, people can take away from this viewing of this video. Is there a technique or some kind of a takeaway or something that they can practice or try out themselves at home in advance, or of any possible interaction with you, that they might be able to get some sort of benefit from immediately, just that they could do at home and see some results?
Absolutely. I would like to recommend the 4-7-8 breathing technique, and it's exactly how it sounds. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, breathe out for 8 seconds. And you can do that whenever you're feeling a build-up of anxiety, or before you or when you get into bed before you try to sleep. Mm-hmm. Just go through that process, and it helps just to calm everything down. Typically, breathing leads to relaxation. Relaxation leads to suggestion. Suggestion leads to hypnosis. And that's the way we go. We always start with addressing your breathing. That also tends to focus your mind inward. Mm-hmm. The 4-7-8 breathing technique. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. That will help with sleep, with anxiety. Anytime you're feeling like you need just to just unwind, go for it.
I'm gonna have to try that out. Didn't you have a client of yours that actually you didn't have time to set up your initial session? You introduced that technique to her for some reason.
Yeah, she was going for an MRI. Mm-hmm. And she suffered with claustrophobia. Mm-hmm. She only told me about this around 10 minutes before she was due to have the session, the MRI. So there was no time for us to actually have a formal session. So all I suggested to her was 4-7-8 breathing, from the moment we got off the phone all the way through the MRI, just to keep herself calm. And just take away that overriding fear. And she found it very, very helpful. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that's a good thing to end on. I think that it's something that I recommend everybody give a try to. And if that doesn't solve all of your problems, then we'll provide Marc's information at the end of this video, and you can reach out to him and have a conversation with him. And I think that you'd find it extremely useful and helpful. whether it be for your sleep issues or anything else. Maybe you're having trouble quitting smoking as you're going to sleep, and maybe it can help you with both of those simultaneously. It's good to probably solve the smoking problem before you solve the sleeping problem, so that they don't, fall asleep with a lit cigarette.
Absolutely.
Well, it's good to see you, Marc. Appreciate
Great to see you too.
And I hope to do a follow-on session a little bit down the road, and talk more about this, and maybe dig a little deeper into focusing on actual sleep sessions.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. You have a good one.
Take care.